In the world of Hindi literature, you have your stars, sure, but every now and then someone bursts onto the scene like a supernova, and nothing is ever the same again. His work was loved, it was hated, and his life was this incredible mix of massive fame and just crushing loss. Today we're talking about the one and only Harivansh Rai Bachchan.
So just try to picture it. It's one evening, back in 1935. With a single masterpiece, this man basically captures the soul of a nation. He creates this whole new, intoxicating world with his words. His arrival wasn't just some small event, it was the event.
Now, that family name, Bachchan, is famous all over the world, right? Carried by one of the biggest movie stars of all time. But this isn't his story. This is the story of the man who gave him that name, the poet, the scholar, the rebel. To really understand the legend, you have to go back to the moment it all began, the moment his voice found an audience, and really found its place in history.
The year is 1935. A work is published that gives him instant, unbelievable fame. It was called Madhushala, the House of Wine, and it would make him a household name and, well, a target.
But that just makes you wonder, doesn't it? How does a young man from a small, struggling family who's juggling school and tutoring jobs just to get by go on to write a poem that challenges an entire literary world? To figure that out, we've got to go back a little further.
Because long before the fame and way before all the controversy, his poetic soul was really forged by some incredibly tough times, by a deep love, and by an unimaginable tragedy. So he was born back in 1907, and his early life was, a real struggle. His family was in debt, but he was determined to get an education, even tutoring other kids to help out. He was totally swept up in the energy of the independence movement, but maybe the biggest thing that shaped him was getting married at just 19 years old to his first wife, Shyama.
And just look at the timing here. It is absolutely brutal. In 1935, he's on top of the world. Madhushala makes him a star. And then, just 1 year later, tragedy hits. His beloved wife, Shyama, passes away. I mean, can you imagine? He's at the absolute peak of his career and the absolute bottom of his personal life, all at the same time.
His son, Amitabh, later said that his father was just consumed by depression. He described the poetry from that time as being completely dark, with every single line just filled with this deep, inescapable sadness. The spotlight of fame was completely overshadowed by grief.
But here's the incredible part. It was out of all that, the poverty, the love, the crushing loss, that his most defining work came to be. A work that wasn't dark at all. It was defiant. So let's take a closer look at Madhushala.
So, what is Madhushala anyway? Well, it's a long poem made up of 135 four-line stanzas, and he was inspired by the Persian poet Omar Khayyam. But here's the absolute key. Bachchan wasn't literally writing about drinking in a tavern. No, he used the tavern, the wine, the cup as these amazing metaphors to talk about life, to question authority, and to celebrate a kind of shared humanity that goes way beyond religion or caste.
And this really shows you just how radical this thing was. At the time, the big thing in Hindi poetry was called Shayavad. Think Romanticism. It was very mystical, used fancy academic language, and stuck to traditional themes. Bachchan comes along and creates a whole new genre he called Halavad, or the cult of wine. He used the simple, everyday language of the people to talk about things considered taboo, totally breaking the mold.
And he was not afraid to be provocative. This line right here was incredibly controversial. He was telling people not to chant the traditional funeral line, "The name of Ram is truth," but instead to say, "The true tavern is truth." For him, that tavern was a symbol for a place where everyone was equal, a truth he felt was more real than any religious division.
So yeah, the backlash was swift and it was fierce. Critics called his work the cult of the bottle. He was actually threatened with violence. He even needed police protection for a poetry reading in Varanasi. But the public couldn't get enough. His recitals drew these massive, super enthusiastic crowds who just loved his rebellious spirit and powerful message of unity.
But if you only see him as this popular, controversial poet, you are missing such a huge piece of the puzzle, because Harivansh Rai Bachchan was also a seriously brilliant scholar and intellectual. I mean, just look at this career path. He didn't just rest on his poetic fame. After that initial success, he taught English at a university. Then, and this is amazing, he goes to Cambridge and becomes only the second Indian ever to get a PhD in English literature from there. And after that, he worked for the Indian government, fighting to make Hindi an official language.
His professor at Cambridge, T.R. Hen, was totally impressed. He wrote that Bachchan's work was a real contribution to knowledge, and that he had this unique advantage because he was a brilliant poet himself. And that's what made him so special, right? He had the heart of a poet and the mind of a scholar.
So what do we make of all this? What's the legacy of this man of so many contradictions? The people's poet, who was also an elite Cambridge scholar, the writer who celebrated life but was shaped by such profound loss.
Well, the official recognition was just immense. He received the Padma Bhushan, which is one of India's highest honors. He won the Sahitya Akademi Award, the Saraswati Samman. We're talking the most prestigious literary prizes in the country. He was even nominated to the Upper House of Parliament. So, in the end, the very establishment he once challenged ended up celebrating him.
And of course, today, his legacy is maybe most famous through the voice of his son. When Amitabh Bachchan recites Madhushala, with that iconic baritone voice, he introduces his father's work to millions. He makes sure those powerful, rebellious words are truly immortal.
But after all of it, the struggle, the heartbreak, the incredible fame, and the harsh criticism, what did he think? How did this giant of literature actually introduce himself to the world?
He left us with this: a body of clay, a mind full of play, a moment's life, that is me. So humble, so profound, and just a beautiful, poetic way to sum up a life that was lived to the absolute fullest. A fleeting moment that left behind a legacy for all time.